Commander Zexthala pressed her scaled fingers against the holographic display, watching the patrol routes of the Galactic Council fleet with growing unease. The bridge of her dreadnought, Silent Thunder, hummed with the quiet efficiency of a Krillian warship, but tonight something felt different. Her sensor operator, a young Vorthack named Jex, kept glancing at his readings with confusion written across his 6 eyes. "Commander, I'm getting some strange readings from the outer rim sensors," Jex said, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of his species. "There's something out there, but it doesn't match any known signatures in our database." Zexthala moved to his station, her armor clicking softly against the metal floor. As one of the Council's most experienced military commanders, she had seen strange readings before. Usually they turn out to be asteroids, old derelict ships, or sometimes pirates trying to mask their signatures. But this felt different. "Show me," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the local star system. They were patrolling the border between Council space and the vast unknown regions beyond, an area that had been quiet for over 200 years. Red dots appeared on the screen, scattered across a wide area just beyond their sensor range. "How many contacts?" Zexthala asked. "That's just it, Commander. The computer can't get a solid count. Sometimes it reads 50 ships, sometimes 500, sometimes 5,000. It's like they're using some kind of technology we've never encountered before." Zexthala studied the readings carefully. In her 40 years of service, she had fought against the savage Bloodclaw Empire, defended against hive mind incursions, and even survived the terrible War of the Seven Suns. She knew every type of stealth technology, every kind of sensor jamming, every trick that the known species used in warfare. This was something else entirely. "Send a message to the Council Fleet Command," she decided. "Tell them we have unknown contacts on the border. Request backup and further orders." As Jex began composing the message, Zexthala returned to her command chair. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to witness something that would change everything. The border had been quiet for so long that most younger officers had never seen real action. They thought of this assignment as boring patrol duty, a place where nothing ever happened. But Zexthala remembered the old stories. Every species in the galaxy had legends about the darkness beyond known space. Some spoke of ancient evils sleeping in the void. Others told tales of civilizations so advanced that they had transcended physical existence. And then there were the human myths. Every child in Council space knew the stories of the mythical humans. They were supposed to be creatures of incredible violence and cunning, beings who fought wars that lasted for generations and never gave up no matter how hopeless their situation became. According to the legends, humans had once ruled a vast empire among the stars, but they had vanished mysteriously thousands of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and stories. Most adults dismissed the human myths as fairy tales designed to frighten children into good behavior. Archaeological expeditions had found some evidence of an advanced civilization in certain sectors, but nothing conclusive. The ruins were old, damaged by time and cosmic radiation. Any artifacts that might have proven the existence of humans had long since crumbled to dust. Zexthala had always been more open to the possibility that the myths contained some truth. In her experience, legends usually started with real events, even if they became distorted over time. But she had never expected to encounter anything related to those old stories during a routine border patrol. The communications officer, a tall and elegant Sindari named Velnara, looked up from her station. "Commander, I'm having trouble reaching Fleet Command. There's some kind of interference blocking our long-range communications." "What kind of interference?" Zexthala demanded. "I don't know. It's not like any jamming technology we've seen before. It's almost like space itself is being disrupted somehow." Before Zexthala could respond, every alarm on the bridge began blaring at once. The lights dimmed to emergency red as power was automatically redirected to shields and weapons. Through the chaos of warning sounds, she heard Jex shouting from his station. "Commander, the contacts are moving. They're heading straight for us." ZYXThala leaped to the main display, her heart pounding. The red dots that had been scattered across the edge of their sensors were now forming into a coherent formation, moving with purpose and incredible speed toward the Council patrol fleet. "How fast are they moving?" she asked. "Impossible speeds, Commander. They should be tearing themselves apart with those acceleration rates. But they're holding formation perfectly." ZYXThala activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her patrol consisted of 12 ships, 3 dreadnoughts like her own, 6 heavy cruisers, and 3 fast attack ships. It was a formidable force, enough to handle most threats they might encounter on the border. "All ships, this is Commander ZYXThala. Unknown contacts approaching at high speed. Battle stations, defensive formation, Theta 7. Do not engage unless they show hostile intent." The response from her captains was immediate and professional. She watched on her tactical display as her ships moved into position, forming an interlocking network of overlapping shields and firing zones. Whatever was coming toward them would have to face the concentrated firepower of an entire Council patrol fleet. "Contact in 30 seconds, Jex reported. ZYXThala activated her personal armor's combat systems and gripped her command chair tightly. Through the bridge's main view screen, she could see only stars and empty space. Whatever was approaching remained invisible to their optical sensors. "Contact in 10 seconds, Jex said, his voice tight with nervousness. "Hold steady," ZYXThala commanded. "Wait for visual confirmation before." Her words were cut off as space itself seemed to explode with light. Hundreds of ships materialized out of nothing, as if they had simply stepped sideways from another dimension. They were unlike anything in the Council database, sleek and dark with unusual angles that hurt to look at directly. Most shocking of all was their size. The smallest of the unknown ships was larger than her dreadnought, and the largest was bigger than anything she had ever seen. "By the ancient stars," Velnara whispered. "How many ships are there?" Jex's hands flew over his controls, trying to get an accurate count. "The computer is registering over 2,000 ships, Commander, and they're still appearing." ZYXThala stared at the massive fleet that had materialized before them. Each ship was a work of art, sleek and deadly, with weapon ports that glowed with barely contained energy. She had never seen technology like this, but something about the ship's design triggered a memory from her childhood. These vessels looked like something from the old stories, the myths about the legendary humans. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." Velnara worked quickly at her station. "Channel open, Commander." ZYXThala took a deep breath. "Unknown fleet. This is Commander ZYXThala of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You have entered Council space without permission. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers, speaking in perfect Council standard, but with an accent that sent chills down ZYXThala's spine. It was a voice that carried authority and power, but also something else. Something that reminded her of predators stalking in the dark. "Council ships," the voice said calmly. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Colonial Defense Fleet. We have returned to reclaim what was stolen from us. You have exactly 1 minute to withdraw from this system, or you will be considered hostile forces." The bridge fell completely silent. ZYXThala felt her blood turn to ice water in her veins. Humans. They weren't myths after all. They were real, and they had returned with a fleet that dwarfed anything the Council could field. "Commander," Jex whispered urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup across their entire fleet. Whatever weapons they're carrying, they're powering them up." ZYXThala's mind raced. She had to make a decision that could determine the fate of the entire Council. Her small patrol fleet was vastly outnumbered and apparently outgunned. But she was a warrior, and warriors didn't retreat just because the odds looked bad. "Admiral Chun," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am bound by oath to defend Council space from all threats." If you wish to enter our territory, you must submit to inspection and follow proper diplomatic protocols. A sound came through the speakers that took ZYXThala a moment to identify. The human was laughing. It wasn't the musical laughter of her own people or the clicking amusement of the Vortex. It was something darker, more dangerous. Protocols, Admiral Chen said. Commander, do you know what happened to the last Council fleet that demanded we follow their protocols? It was about 3,000 years ago, just before we left this region of space. ZYXThala's throat went dry. The historical records from that period were fragmentary, but there were references to a massive battle that had devastated several star systems. The official reports claimed it had been a natural disaster, some kind of stellar phenomenon. But there had always been rumors, whispers about a war that the Council had lost so badly that they had agreed never to speak of it again. You're talking about the Lost War, she said slowly. Lost War, Admiral Chen repeated, and there was amusement in her voice. Is that what you call it now? How interesting. We simply called it the time the Council tried to enslave humanity and learned why that was a bad idea. On her tactical display, ZYXThala could see more human ships continuing to appear. The count was approaching 3,000 now, and there was no sign that they were finished. Each ship that materialized was a masterpiece of engineering, clearly designed by a species that understood warfare on a level that the current Council had forgotten. 30 seconds remaining, Admiral Chen announced. ZYXThala looked around her bridge at her crew. They were good people, loyal and brave, but they had never faced anything like this. The humans had returned after 3,000 years of absence, and they had brought enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships, this is the commander. Prepare to withdraw to minimum safe distance. We are not engaging at this time. Commander, came the voice of Captain Rextar from the heavy cruiser Eternal Vigilance. Are we really going to let them intimidate us? This is Council space. Captain, ZYXThala replied firmly. Look at your sensors. Count their ships. Look at their weapon signatures. Do you really think our 12 ships can fight 3,000 of theirs and win? There was a pause before Rextar responded. Understood, Commander. All ships withdrawing. ZYXThala watched her fleet begin to pull back, maintaining defensive formations but clearly moving away from the human fleet. It felt like retreat, but she knew it was the only rational choice. She needed to get word back to the Council about what they were facing. Time, Admiral Chen announced. Commander ZYXThala, I appreciate your wisdom. However, I want to be clear about something. We are not asking permission to enter this space. We're taking it back. What you call Council space was once part of the human colonial empire. We built the stargates you use, we mapped the trade routes you follow, and we established the colonies you now claim as your own. The main screen flickered, and suddenly, ZYXThala was looking at the human admiral. Sarah Chan appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to contain the cold darkness of space itself. She wore a uniform that was both practical and intimidating, with rank insignia that spoke of vast authority. For 3,000 years, we have been away, Admiral Chan continued. We had other wars to fight, other enemies that required our attention. But now we have returned, and we find that various species have moved into our territory and claimed it as their own. This is unacceptable. ZYXThala forced herself to speak calmly. Admiral, the Council was formed to bring peace and stability to this region. We have built a civilization that spans hundreds of worlds and includes dozens of species working together in harmony. Harmony, Admiral Chun said, and again there was that dangerous amusement in her voice. Tell me, Commander, how many rebellions has the Council crushed in the past century? How many species have been forcibly relocated to make room for Council expansion? How many worlds have been strip-mined to feed the Council's industrial machine? ZYXThala felt her confidence wavering. The questions hit uncomfortably close to home. The Council did maintain order through force when necessary, and there have been difficult decisions made about resource allocation and territorial disputes. But these were the challenges of governing a diverse galactic civilization. "We do what is necessary to maintain peace," she said. "As did we," Admiral Chen replied. "The difference is that we were honest about what we were doing. We were conquerors, and we made no apologies for it. But we also protected what was ours, and we never abandoned our people the way the Council abandons inconvenient populations when they become troublesome." The human admiral leaned forward in her command chair. "Commander, I want you to take a message back to your superiors. Humanity has returned, and we are reclaiming our territory. Species that wish to remain in human space are welcome to do so, provided they acknowledge human authority and contribute to the common defense. Those who refuse to accept the new reality will be relocated to regions beyond our borders. And if the Council refuses to accept your ultimatum?" Zhuangxtala asked. Admiral Chen's smile was not reassuring. "Commander, do you see that star system about 2 light years to your port side? The one the Council has designated as uninhabited." Zhuangxtala glanced at her navigation display. "Yes. Watch carefully." On the main screen, a small section of the human fleet detached itself from the main formation. About 50 ships, each one bristling with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. They moved with perfect coordination, like a school of predatory fish in the deep ocean. Zhuangxtala's sensors tracked them as they entered the uninhabited system Admiral Chun had indicated. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, space itself seemed to ignite. The human ships fired simultaneously, their weapons creating beams of energy so intense that they were visible across interstellar distances. The uninhabited planets in the system simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly by firepower beyond anything in the Council's arsenal. Even the system's star flickered and dimmed, its surface scarred by energies that could burn away entire worlds. "By the ancient stars," Velnara whispered, "they destroyed an entire star system in seconds." Admiral Chen's voice came through the speakers again, calm and matter-of-fact. "That demonstration used approximately 0.001% of our total firepower, Commander. I hope that helps put our conversation in proper perspective." Zhuangxtala stared at the empty space where a star system had existed moments before. In her worst nightmares, she had never imagined weapons capable of such destruction. The humans hadn't just returned with superior numbers. They had returned with technology that made them effectively gods of war. "Your message will be delivered," she said quietly. "Excellent. You have 24 hours to evacuate Council forces from this sector. After that, any Council ships found in human space will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The communication ended, and the main screen returned to showing the massive human fleet. Zhuangxtala stood in the red-lit silence of her bridge, trying to process what had just happened. The myths were true. Humanity was real, and they had returned to reclaim their empire. "Commander," Jex said softly, "what do we do now?" Zhuangxtala looked at her crew, seeing her own shock and fear reflected in their faces. "We go back to Council space," she said, "and we warn them that everything is about to change." As her fleet withdrew from the border, Zhuangxtala couldn't stop thinking about the casual ease with which the humans had destroyed an entire star system. If that was just a demonstration of their weakest weapons, what were they truly capable of? The Council had thought itself the supreme military power in this region of space, but they had been building sandcastles while humanity forged weapons that could shatter reality itself. The war that was coming would not be like anything the galaxy had ever seen. And Zhuangxtala had the terrible feeling that the Council was about to learn why humanity had once been feared throughout the stars. The Council chamber on Zirian Prime had never felt as tense as it did now. High Counselor Thrinquas stood at the center of the vast circular room, his golden robes rustling as he turned to address the representatives of 47 different species. The emergency session had been called within hours of receiving Commander Zhuangxtala's report, and the debate had been raging for 3 days without resolution. The human fleet has established positions in 17 star systems along our outer border, Thrinquas announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. They have made no further aggressive moves, but they have also refused all attempts at diplomatic contact. Our scouts report that more ships arrive daily. Counselor Vexani of the Bloodclaw Empire rose from her seat, her scarred hide bearing the marks of countless battles. This is intolerable. These so-called humans appear from nowhere, destroy an entire star system, and then demand that we abandon territory that has been ours for centuries. The Bloodclaws say we fight. A chorus of agreement rose from several sectors of the chamber. The warrior species had always favored direct action over negotiation. But not everyone shared their enthusiasm for battle. Fight with what? Asked Counselor Marathon of the Aquatic Federation, his voice bubbling through his translation unit. Did you not hear the report? They destroyed 7 planets and a star with 50 ships in a matter of seconds. Our entire fleet couldn't achieve such destruction if we had weeks to work with. High Admiral Corvex stepped forward from his position near the command throne. As the leader of all Council military forces, his opinion carried enormous weight. I've reviewed the sensor data from Commander Zuaxdala's encounter. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. Each human ship appears to carry firepower equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts, and their smallest vessels are still larger than our heavy cruisers. Numbers, demanded Counselor Vexani. How many ships do they have? Our best estimates suggest at least 10,000 vessels, Admiral Corvex replied grimly. Possibly more. They seem to be using some kind of cloaking technology that makes accurate counts impossible. The chamber fell silent. The entire Council fleet consisted of approximately 15,000 ships scattered across hundreds of star systems. If the humans had 10,000 ships concentrated in one location with superior technology and firepower, the military balance was catastrophically uneven. There must be something we can do, said Counselor Yentar of the Tech Union. No technology is perfect. Every system has weaknesses. Perhaps if we combined our resources, pooled our knowledge. With respect, Counselor, Admiral Corvex interrupted, I've had our best analysts studying the human technology for the past 72 hours. Their ships don't use any form of propulsion we can identify. They appear to move by manipulating space itself, folding distances to travel instantly between points. Their weapons fire some kind of coherent energy that our shields cannot deflect or absorb. And their defensive systems. He paused, shaking his head. Our computers can't even properly scan their hulls. It's as if they're made from materials that don't interact with normal matter. High Counselor Thrinquas looked around the chamber at the worried faces of his fellow leaders. Each species represented here had their own proud history, their own military traditions, their own reasons to believe they could stand against any threat. But the evidence was overwhelming. They faced an enemy that outclassed them in every measurable way. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should consider the possibility that accommodation might be preferable to confrontation. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Counselor Vexani leaped to her feet with a roar of outrage. Surrender? You speak of surrender to an enemy we haven't even fought. Not surrender, Thrinquas replied calmly. Negotiation. The human admiral spoke of species remaining in human space under human authority. Perhaps we could find terms that preserve our people's lives and way of life. Under human rule. Ve exenis nadalet. Better to die as free beings than live as slaves. Admiral Corvex stepped forward again. Counselors, I must inform you of something else. While we've been debating, the humans have not been idle. Our long-range scouts report that they've begun construction projects. What kind of construction? Asked Counselor Marathon. Fortifications. Massive orbital installations around key star systems. Energy barriers that span entire regions of space. And he hesitated. Weapons platforms. Enormous weapons platforms that dwarf anything we've ever built. How enormous? High Counselor Thrinquas asked quietly. Some of them are the size of small moons. Our analysts believe they're designed for system-wide bombardment. With weapons like those in place, they could sterilize entire worlds without their fleet ever leaving port. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Not only did humanity possess a superior fleet, but they were building infrastructure for permanent occupation. This wasn't a raid or a temporary incursion. They were planning to stay. Counselor Rick Solon of the Synthetic Collective spoke for the first time, his mechanical voice emotionless but somehow ominous. Our databases contain fragments of historical records from the period the humans call the Lost War. The data is incomplete, but certain details have been preserved. What kind of details? Thrinquas asked. References to human military doctrine. They do not appear to wage war the way we understand it. When they decide that a species or civilization is their enemy, they do not seek to defeat their military forces or capture their territory. They seek to erase them completely. Explain, demanded Vexani. The records speak of entire star systems being rendered uninhabitable. Not destroyed, but transformed into something that cannot support life. Planets turned into balls of glass. Stellar engineering projects that collapse stars into black holes. Biological weapons that could rewrite the genetic code of entire species. Admiral Corvex nodded grimly. That matches what we observed in their demonstration. They didn't just destroy those planets. They unmade them, reduced them to component atoms in seconds. A new voice joined the conversation as the chamber's main communications array activated. The massive holographic display showed the face of Admiral Sarah Chun, appearing as a giant image above the council floor. Her expression was patient but implacable. High Counselor Thrinquas, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The council members stared in shock. Their most secure facility, protected by layers of encryption and quantum shielding, had been penetrated as easily as if it were an open communication channel. Admiral Chun, Thrinquas said, recovering his composure with admirable speed. This is a closed session of the Galactic Council. Your presence here is a violation of our sovereignty. Sovereignty is a luxury for those who possess the power to enforce it. Admiral Chun replied matter-of-factly. You've had 3 days to consider our position. I trust you've reached a decision. Counselor Vexani stepped forward, her claws extended in a gesture of challenge. Human, we do not bow to threats and displays of power. The Council has faced enemies before and survived. We will not submit to your demands. Admiral Chin's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew colder. Counselor Vexani of the Bloodclaw Empire. Yes, I know who you are. Your species has an interesting history of conquering weaker civilizations and enslaving their populations. Tell me, how many billions of sentient beings has your empire killed in the past 1,000 years? Vexani's scarred face flushed with anger. We are warriors. We take what we can hold, and hold what we take. That is the way of strength. Indeed, Admiral Chin said quietly, and now you face something stronger than you. By your own philosophy, we have the right to take what we can hold. The difference is that we can hold everything. High Counselor Thrinquas stepped forward. Admiral, surely there must be some room for negotiation. The Council represents dozens of species, billions of individuals. We cannot simply abandon our homes and our way of life. You won't have to, Admiral Chin replied. Species that accept human authority will be protected and governed according to their needs and capabilities. You'll find us to be reasonable rulers, provided you don't test our patience. And if we refuse, asked Admiral Corvex. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment, seeming to consider her words carefully. Admiral, are you familiar with the concept of exemplary punishment? No, it's an old human military doctrine. When facing a diverse coalition of enemies, you select one member of that coalition and destroy them so completely that the others lose all will to resist. It's efficient because it saves you from having to fight each enemy separately. The implications of her words sent a chill through the chamber. Counselor Marathon's translation unit bubbled nervously as he asked, Which member of the council would you select? Admiral Chinnis skiftet to konslor Vexani. The Bloodclaw Empire seems eager for a fight. They have a proud military tradition, numerous heavily fortified worlds, and a population that has been trained for warfare from birth. If we could defeat them decisively, it would certainly demonstrate the futility of resistance to the other council species. Vexani bared her fangs in a snarl of defiance. Let them come. The Bloodclaws fear no enemy. I'm sure you don't, Admiral Chen said calmly. Tell me, Counselor, how many worlds does your empire control? 47 combat worlds and twice that number of resource colonies, Vexani replied proudly. And your total fleet strength? 3,000 ships of the line, plus support vessels and planetary defense forces. Admiral Chen nodded. Impressive. A formidable military force by any standard. Unfortunately, it's also completely inadequate for the war you're contemplating. The holographic display changed, showing a three-dimensional map of Bloodclaw space. Red indicators mark the locations of their major military installations, fleet bases, and fortress worlds. We've been studying your empire's defensive arrangements, Admiral Chen continued. Your strategic doctrine is based on the concept of layered defense. Multiple rings of fortifications, each designed to slow down an invading force while your mobile fleets maneuver for decisive engagement. Our defenses have never been breached, Vexani declared. That's because you've never faced an enemy capable of ignoring them entirely, Admiral Chen replied. Watch. The display zoomed in on one of the Bloodclaw Empire's most heavily defended systems. Dozens of orbital fortresses surrounded the planets, their weapons arrays glowing with ready power. Fleet formations patrolled between the defensive installations, ready to respond to any threat. Then, without warning, space around the system filled with human ships. Not slowly, not with the gradual buildup of a normal fleet deployment, but instantly. One moment the space was clear except for Bloodclaw vessels. The next it was filled with thousands of dark, deadly human warships. This is happening right now, Admiral Chen said quietly. Live feed from your system designated Korthvel. The council members watched in horror as the human fleet opened fire. But instead of the massive energy beams they had seen before, the humans used something different. Streams of what looked like silver dust flowed from their ships, spreading through space like fog. Where the silver streams touched Bloodclaw vessels, the ships simply stopped working. Their lights went out, their engines died, their weapons fell silent. The orbital fortresses suffered the same fate, their massive guns falling silent as their power systems failed. Nanomachines, Admiral Chan explained casually, that it disassembled the molecular bonds holding your technology together. Very precise, very effective. Your crews are unharmed, but their ships and weapons are now useless scrap metal. Within minutes, the entire Bloodclaw defense fleet had been neutralized without a single shot being fired in return. The humans hadn't even bothered to destroy the enemy vessels. They had simply made them cease to function. Counselor Vexani stared at the display in shock. Impossible. Our ships are hardened against all known forms of electronic warfare. This isn't electronic warfare, Admiral Chen said. It's molecular warfare. We're disassembling your technology atom by atom. The display shifted to show other Bloodclaw systems. In each one, the same scenario was playing out. Human fleets appeared without warning, deployed their nanomachine weapons, and systematically disabled every piece of military hardware in the system. The Bloodclaw Empire's mighty war machine was being dismantled in real time. Stop. Call off your attack. This isn't an attack, Admiral Chen replied. This is a demonstration. Your people are unharmed. Your planets are undamaged. But your ability to wage war has been eliminated. This is what happens to species that choose to resist human authority. High Counselor Threnquas found his voice. Admiral, this is an act of war against a member of the Galactic Council. No, Admiral Chen said quietly. This is conquest. War implies that both sides have a chance of victory. As you can see, that is not the case here. The display now showed the aftermath of the human operation. Across 47 star systems, the pride of the Bloodclaw Empire floated dead in space. Thousands of ships, hundreds of orbital fortresses, countless defensive installations, all reduced to lifeless metal in less than an hour. The choice is now yours, Admiral Chun continued, addressing the full council. You can accept human authority and continue to exist as functioning civilizations under our protection. Or you can resist and suffer the same fate as the Bloodclaw military. But understand this. There will be no negotiation, no compromise, and no second chances. You have 6 hours to decide. The holographic display flickered and died, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Councillor Vexani slumped into her seat, staring at the empty space where the image of her empire's destruction had been displayed. Admiral Corvex spoke first, his voice hollow. They didn't even use their main fleet. The ships that neutralized the Bloodclaw Empire were just a fraction of their total force. 6 hours, High Counselor Thrinquas said quietly. They're giving us 6 hours to decide the fate of our entire civilization. What is there to decide? Asked Councilor Marathon. They've demonstrated that resistance is impossible. They can disable our technology, destroy our worlds, and eliminate our fleets without suffering any casualties themselves. Councillor Rick Solin's mechanical voice cut through the despair. Analysis indicates that human technology operates on principles unknown to current galactic science. Their capabilities appear to be several thousand years in advance of our own. Resistance would be logically futile. So we surrender, said Councillor Yintar bitterly. We abandon our independence and become subjects of a species we thought was mythical. We survive, High Counselor Thrinquas corrected. Our people live. Our cultures continue. That's more than we'll have if we choose to fight. Counselor Vexani looked up from her seat, her usual fierce expression replaced by something that might have been grief. They destroyed my empire in less than an hour. 3,000 years of Bloodclaw military tradition ended without a single honorable death in battle. Your people are alive, Thrinquas pointed out. That means there's hope for the future. Hope for what? To serve new masters. To learn, said an unexpected voice. Counselor Zelquin of the Academic Consortium, who rarely spoke in council sessions, stepped forward. Consider what we've witnessed. Instantaneous faster-than-light travel without using hyperspace. Weapons that can destroy matter at the atomic level. Technology that can disable our most advanced systems without damaging them. If we become part of a human civilization, we might have access to knowledge beyond our wildest dreams. Admiral Corvex shook his head, assuming they're willing to share that knowledge. Conquerors rarely educate their subjects in the secrets of their power. Perhaps, Zelquin acknowledged. But certain destruction versus possible advancement, is that really a difficult choice? High Counselor Thrinquas looked around the chamber one final time. We must vote. All in favor of accepting human authority? One by one, hands rose throughout the chamber. Even Counselor Vexani, after a long moment of hesitation, raised her clawed hand in surrender. The final vote was unanimous. Then it's decided, Thrinquas said heavily. The Galactic Council submits to human authority. May our people forgive us for this choice. As the council members began to file out of the chamber, preparing to draft the formal surrender documents, none of them noticed the small device that had materialized on High Counselor Thrinquas's podium. It looked like a simple communication unit, but its technology was far beyond anything they possessed. When it activated, Admiral Chin's voice filled the empty chamber. High Counselor, you made the wise choice. A transport will arrive within the hour to begin the transition process. Welcome to the human colonial empire. The device vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving the chamber in darkness and silence. 6 months after the council's surrender, Commander Zaxthala stood on the observation deck of the orbital station New Harmony, watching human construction crews work on the massive defensive platforms that now surrounded her homeworld. The changes have been swift and dramatic, but not in the way she had expected. Quite a sight, isn't it? Said a voice behind her. She turned to find Admiral Sarah Chun approaching, no longer wearing the intimidating black uniform of the Colonial Defense Fleet. Instead, she wore the more practical gray coveralls of the Engineering Corps, her sleeves rolled up, and her hands stained with the kind of honest work that came from hands-on construction. "Admiral," Ziwaxthala said, offering a respectful bow. "I didn't expect to find you here, personally overseeing the installation work." Chun smiled, and Ziwaxthala was surprised to find it was a genuine expression, lacking the predatory coldness she remembered from their first encounter. "Please, just call me Sarah. I'm not much for military formality when we're not actively shooting at anyone." She joined Ziwaxthala at the observation window, looking out at the construction work. Human engineers in powered suits worked alongside crews from a dozen different species, assembling the components of what would become one of the most advanced defensive installations in known space. "Your people adapted quickly," Chun observed. "Most species take years to learn how to work with human technology. Your engineers figured out the basics in weeks." "We're motivated learners," Ziwaxthala replied dryly. "Though I have to admit, some of your technology still seems like magic to us." "Any sufficiently advanced technology appears magical to those who don't understand it," Chun quoted. "But the principles aren't that complex once you grasp the fundamentals. We're just working with forces that your science hasn't discovered yet." Ziwaxthala watched as a massive shield generator was maneuvered into position. The device was the size of a small building, but the human anti-gravity systems made it move as easily as a child's toy. "Why are you building all this?" The council surrendered. "There's no threat to defend against." Chun's expression grew serious. "Oh, but there is a very serious threat indeed. One that's been growing stronger while we've been away, and one that the council never knew existed." "What kind of threat?" Instead of answering directly, Chun gestured toward a nearby observation lounge. "Come on, there's something you need to see." They walked in comfortable silence through the station's corridors. Ziwaxthala had to admit that human architecture was impressive. The walls were made from materials that seemed to glow with their own internal light, and the gravity felt perfectly natural despite the fact that they were clearly in a rotating section. Everything was designed for efficiency and comfort without the sharp edges and harsh angles that characterized most military installations. The observation lounge was empty except for a few off-duty workers sharing drinks and conversation. Chun led Ziwaxthala to a private alcove where a holographic display waited. With a gesture, she activated it. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the local galactic arm, with thousands of stars marked in different colors. Most were blue, representing the former council space that now fell under human protection. But there's a vast region of red markers spreading inward from the galactic rim like a cancer. "What am I looking at?" Ziwaxthala asked. "The Devourers," Chun said quietly, "an extragalactic species that arrived in our galaxy about 5,000 years ago. They consume entire star systems, converting all matter and energy into more of themselves. They're not interested in conquest or communication. They just eat everything they encounter." Ziwaxthala felt her blood chill. "How many systems have they consumed?" "Over 10,000, and the rate is accelerating. They figured out how to reproduce faster than we initially calculated." Chun manipulated the display, zooming in on the advancing red tide. "Our projections indicate they'll reach the core worlds of the former council space in approximately 50 years. 50 years, Ziwaxthala repeated numbly. "And the council never knew about this?" "The council never explored beyond a certain range from their core systems. They were content to manage their existing territory rather than push outward into unknown space. But we humans have always been explorers. We encountered the Devourers during our expansion phase, about 6,000 years ago." Chen's fingers moved across the display controls, and the map shifted to show historical data. "At first, we thought we could negotiate with them, find some kind of peaceful coexistence. That lasted until they consumed our first colony world with 2 billion people on it. After that, it became a war of survival. The display showed the ebb and flow of a conflict spanning millennia. Human space contracting under Devourer assault, then pushing back as new technologies were developed. Entire sectors being evacuated and abandoned, then reclaimed decades later. It was a war fought on a scale that dwarfed anything in the Council's experience. We fought them for 3,000 years, Chun continued. Lost hundreds of worlds, billions of people. But we learned, we adapted, and eventually we developed weapons that could stop them. The war stalemated about 1,000 years ago, with both sides too exhausted to continue offensive operations. So you left, Duaxthalas said, understanding beginning to dawn. You want to find new resources, new allies, new ways to fight them. We want to prepare, Chin corrected. We spent 1,000 years building new technologies, new ship designs, new weapon systems. And we knew that eventually we need to come back and reclaim our territory so we could establish a proper defensive line. Zwaxthala looked at the map with new understanding. The human occupation wasn't about conquest for its own sake. It was about building a fortress wall across the galaxy to stop something far worse than any human empire. The council systems, she said slowly. You need them as a buffer zone. More than that, we need the industrial capacity, the population base, the resources. Fighting the Devourers requires sacrifice on a scale that no single species can sustain. But together, with all the council species contributing their strengths, we might have a chance. Chin manipulated the display again, showing projected defensive positions. Massive installations spanning entire star systems, fleets that numbered in the hundreds of thousands, industrial complexes that could build warships by the dozen. It was a vision of militarization beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. This is why you didn't negotiate, Zwaxthala realized. You couldn't afford to spend years in diplomatic discussions while the Devourers continued to advance. Time is the one resource we don't have, Chin agreed. Every day we delayed meant more systems consumed, more potential allies lost. We needed to establish control quickly and begin the preparation phase immediately. A new voice joined their conversation as Captain Marcus Webb approached their alcove. Zwaxthala recognized him as one of the human officers who had been working with her engineering teams. Admiral, we've got the shield generators online in sectors 7 through 12. The Krillian work crews are exceeding all expectations. He noticed Zwaxthala and nodded respectfully. Commander, your people are natural engineers. We're ahead of schedule on every project they're involved with. Thank you, Captain, Chin said. How are the recruitment efforts going? Better than expected. We got volunteers from 38 different species for the integrated fleet commands. The Bloodclaws are particularly eager to prove themselves in combat roles. Zwaxthala wasn't surprised. The Bloodclaw Empire had been devastated by their humiliating defeat, but they were still warriors at heart. The opportunity to fight against a genuine existential threat would appeal to their sense of honor. What about the technology transfer programs? Chin asked, proceeding smoothly. The academic species are absorbing the theoretical knowledge faster than we projected. The Synthetic Collective has already started producing improved versions of some of our basic systems. Chin smiled with what appeared to be genuine pride. Excellent. The diversity of approaches is exactly what we hoped for. Human technology is powerful, but it's been developed from a single species perspective. Fresh viewpoints can only make it better. After Captain Webb left, Zwaxthala found herself studying Admiral Chun with new eyes. This isn't really a conquest at all, is it? It's a recruitment drive. Both, Chin admitted. We needed to establish authority quickly to avoid years of debate and political maneuvering. But our ultimate goal is to create a true alliance. The Devourers can only be stopped by unified effort. And if some species had chosen to fight rather than submit, Chin's expression grew somber. Then they would have died, and we would have been forced to fight the Devourers with fewer allies and fewer resources. The galaxy would have been a little less likely to survive. She gestured at the map, where the red tide of consumed systems continued its inexorable advance. Zwaxthala, I need you to understand something. In 50 years, when the Devourers reach this region of space, there will be no neutrals, no bystanders, no one sitting out the war. Every living being in the galaxy will either be fighting the Devourers or being consumed by them. That's why we couldn't afford to be gentle in our approach. Zhuaixtala studied the projection, trying to imagine what it would mean to face an enemy that literally ate entire worlds. What are our chances? Better than they were 6 months ago, Chen replied. The integration is proceeding faster than we hoped. Your species brings strengths that we lack, and we're learning from each other. The combined fleet will be more powerful than anything humanity has ever fielded alone. But will it be enough? Chen was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. The Devourers have had 50 years to grow stronger too. Our last intelligence reports suggest they've developed new consumption techniques that allow them to process matter faster than before. But we have advantages now that we didn't have during the original war, such as diversity, Chen said simply. Human military doctrine is effective, but it's also predictable after fighting the same enemy for thousands of years. The Devourers learned to counter our tactics, but they've never faced Bloodclaw Berserker charges or Krillian precision engineering or synthetic collective networked intelligence systems. They'll have to adapt to 47 different species' ways of thinking and fighting. The display shifted to show detailed schematics of the defensive installations under construction. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, combining human technology with innovations from the various council species. Weapon systems that no single species could have developed alone, shield generators that use principles from multiple scientific traditions, command and control systems that integrated the best features of dozens of different approaches. There's something else, Chun continued, something we discovered during our time away. The Devourers aren't just a random plague that happened to invade our galaxy. They're running from something. Zhuaixtala felt her heart skip. Running from what? We don't know yet. Our deep space scouts found the remains of several other galaxies that have been completely consumed. The patterns suggest the Devourers have been fleeing across intergalactic space for millions of years, staying just ahead of something. Something worse than the Devourers? Apparently. Chen's expression was grim, which means that even if we win the coming war, it might not be the last war we have to fight. They sat in contemplative silence, watching the construction crews work on the defensive platforms. The scale of what they were building was staggering, but even these massive installations seemed small compared to the threat they were designed to face. Why are you telling me this? Zhuaixtala asked eventually. Because you're going to be one of the senior commanders in the integrated fleet, Chen replied. Your experience at the border, your ability to make tactical decisions under pressure, your understanding of both human and council military systems. We need officers like you in leadership positions. You want me to help command the defense against the Devourers. I want you to help save the galaxy, Chen said simply. All of our species, all of our cultures, all of our hopes for the future. In 50 years, none of the political arrangements or territorial disputes or ancient grudges will matter. The only thing that will matter is whether we can work together well enough to stop an enemy that wants to eat everything we've ever built or loved. Zhuaixtala looked out at the construction work again, but now she saw it differently. Those weren't instruments of oppression being built. They were instruments of survival, the tools that might allow her children and their children to live in a galaxy that still contained more than one species. What do you need me to do? She asked. Chun smiled, and this time there was warmth in it, and hope, and the kind of determination that Zhuaixtala had seen in the finest military officers of every species she'd ever served with. Help us build something that has never existed before, Chen said. A true galactic alliance. Not a council that rules through political compromise and economic pressure, but a partnership of equals united by necessity and held together by trust. Trust, Zhuaixtala repeated. That's going to be the hardest part, isn't it? After the way you conquered us. Maybe, Chen admitted, but I think you'd be surprised how quickly people can learn to trust each other when they're facing annihilation together. Fear of a common enemy can be the beginning of friendship if both sides are willing to see past their immediate grievances to the larger picture. She stood up and extended her hand in the human gesture of partnership. "Welcome to the real war, Commander Zvyxthala. Let's go save the galaxy." As Zvyxthala clasped the human's hand, she felt something she hadn't experienced since that first terrifying encounter with the human fleet. She felt hope, not for victory necessarily, but for the possibility of victory, for the chance that all the species of the galaxy might find a way to work together when it mattered most. Outside the observation window, the construction continued. Human and alien workers building something unprecedented, something that might be powerful enough to stand against the darkness that was coming from the rim of the galaxy. It wasn't the future any of them had planned for, but it might be the future that would allow them all to survive. In 50 years, they would find out if it was enough. But for now, they had work to do, alliances to build, and a galaxy to prepare for the greatest war in its history. The myths about humanity had become reality, but the real story was just beginning.